want to just welcome everybody and say good evening. Thank you for joining us for this critically important program. We are going to be asking one difficult but very, very necessary question: whether the overseers of the 2x2 worker church bear responsibility for the concealment of child sexual abuse and misconduct within the system that most of us trusted with every single aspect of our lives. Whether you're watching live, sharing this later, or viewing this recording, this presentation will last about 2 hours, and we want to encourage you to write down your questions and post them and save them till the end of the show. We will be, or afterwards, as you work your way through all of the evidence, we're going to be giving you presenting a lot of evidence tonight, and the answers to all of your questions will be shown in a live, again, August 5th follow-up show that we're going to be doing to the show we're doing tonight. So please know that your questions will get answered, so feel free to put them in the comments. Those are the questions we'll be answering. We do need to offer a warning that we will be presenting some disturbing evidence of sexual abuse and child sexual abuse. Also, if you continue watching this tonight, you may not be able to unsee the overwhelming reasons that many overseers have spent years deflecting blame, attacking the credibility of survivors and advocates, dismissing evidence, questioning motives, and spreading fear about those who speak out, all the while working harder to protect the institution's reputation rather than to answer the evidence itself. Tonight, we will be examining documentation suggesting that offenders were moved across state lines and international borders, often creating distance between predators and accountability. We will clearly demonstrate repeated failures to report abuse to legal authorities. We will present evidence of knowledge of countless allegations, some involving workers who continue to preach from the U.S. and international convention platforms today. We will also directly contradict what is currently being preached from those platforms in the U.S. and around the world, that the kingdom of God is being attacked from the outside. Through documentation written by some of the very people promoting those narratives, we will show evidence to you suggesting that the greatest threat may be coming from within, and most notably, from the top down. We would like to dedicate this entire presentation to every victim of this betrayal that has profoundly affected our trust. This trust is so complete that many entrusted individuals, not only with their lives, but with their children and what they believe to be their eternal salvation. The grief and betrayal left in the wake of that broken trust can be crushing. Tonight, we also want to honor this pain and suffering of far too many people that we know and love. Emily Dickinson summed up our hearts really well when she wrote, "If I can stop one heart from breaking, if I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. If I can ease one life, the aching, or cool one pain, or help one fainting robin unto his nest again, I shall not live in vain." Tonight, we are going to be focusing on two key themes. First, the culture of abuse. Our position is very simple. It is not a flaw in the system. It is a key systemic feature of the system. Second, we want to give you an inkling of the actual investigative process behind all of these cases. Responsible advocacy is not about accusation. It's not built on that. It's built on documentation. Allegations are not made public until extensive research, corroboration, evidence, collection, and verification have taken place. Credible allegations are claims that are believable and more likely to be true than not true, based on careful review of the evidence and witness accounts. 2x2 Church Accountability investigates and vets every allegation before sharing it ensuring that that information is in fact reliable. Exposing abuse 2x2 only reports on individuals whose allegations have gone through that vetting process. This work is painstaking, time-consuming, and conducted with great care because the truth does matter. There is a literal mountain of evidence involving far too many trusted individuals. To make tonight's presentation manageable, we've narrowed our focus down to just 13 individuals. Even so, the evidence may still feel staggering. We will not be discussing the ongoing FBI investigation other than to acknowledge that it remains active and ongoing. As publicly reflected on the FBI's website, investigations of this magnitude take time. The wheels of justice grind slowly, so please be assured that they are taking this very seriously. We will begin with introductions of our esteemed guests, followed by alternating presentations from each of them regarding evidence related to the exact conduct of 13 documented cases that we will be discussing tonight. These presentations will be followed by a roundtable discussion exploring one question: what on earth are the overseers thinking by not doing what they need to do? I will then offer some closing remarks, followed by a final personal statement from each of our guests. Shortly after the presentation, we've decided it will be tomorrow morning, a document titled Culture of Crime Cover-Ups, containing links to every single piece of evidence that we are going to reference tonight, will be made publicly available for everyone who wants to truly understand the intentionality behind the cover-ups. You should examine every document for yourself so that you can clearly see the intent and the magnitude of this betrayal. We will be also hosting a follow-up extended live stream on Wednesday, August 5th, with a panel including Cynthia, Bruce, Cherie's husband, Chester, as well as several additional guests where we'll be answering, again, all of your questions directly. I wanted to thank you again for being here. Let's get started. Cynthia, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Cynthia Liles, private investigator, work on child sex abuse cases against institutions of trust.
Bruce.
I'm Bruce Murdoch. I'm in BC, Canada. I've had a long history with the culture of this church. All four of my grandparents entered the church between 1910 and 1920, and so this has been a long history that we've had. I have been a member of the board of Wings for Truth since 2010, and continue to be involved with it.
Cherie.
I'm Cherie Crop Gehrig, maiden name Berry. My parents owned the Jackson, Mississippi Convention grounds where I was raised, and I left in 1990. I'm married to Chester Ehrig. We live in Texas. I'm the author of the book Preserving the Truth, and I own the website Telling the Truth, third generation.
Thank you all of you for being here. The work that you have put into this presentation tonight, not just for us, but for everyone coming behind us and the generations that follow. I cannot thank you enough. As we go into these presentations, we're going to also be sharing pictures of the perpetrators, not for notoriety on their part, but because when you see their picture, why would you not trust them if you didn't know that they were in your presence and they're literally sitting beside you at meeting? We will also show, with permission, a couple of pictures of their victims because every one of them is a human. Cherie, do you want to get started with our first presentation tonight of Ira Hobbs?
Ira Hobbs was born March 10, 1933 in Kentucky, and he's currently 93 years old. There were 9 Hobbs children, 6 sons, 3 daughters, plus 2 that didn't survive. 4 became workers, 2 became state overseers, and 2 didn't profess. The Hobbs family moved from Kentucky to Memphis around 1934. They were considered royalty. Ira entered the work in Tennessee and was also in the work in the states of Georgia, Florida, Ohio, Colorado, Kentucky, Louisiana, and Texas. In 1960 to 1968, Hobbs repeatedly sexually abused Jean Trotter Austin from when she was 8 to 9 years old in the 3rd grade until she was 16 when he moved to Florida around 1967. You have the picture of the Trotter family?
I do.
There. When we were vacationing in Florida, we happened onto the Trotter family at one of the meetings we were at. This was when I was a young teenager in my family. We took this picture, and I knew Jean. That was my first meeting of her at that time. And Jean was born in January 28, 1952 in Georgia, born and raised in meetings, professed at age 12. Growing up, she never felt loved or normal, and was vulnerable to being abused. Jean said that while Ira was playing Scrabble with her and her family, he would put his hand up her dress and into her panties under the table. This has been his MO for some other young girls also. One girl, when they were giving thanks at convention preps, he did so. Another while helping her with her homework. District workers in 1970 also reported sexual assaults by Hobbs to senior brother workers. Cynthia?
What's that?
It's Cynthia's turn for Gardner.
Oh, did you want me to take over with Gardner?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So in the 1980s, Dale Gardner, who's a father of a Ira Hobbs victim, started communicating with some of the overseers and workers, pleading with them to do something about Ira Hobbs. So by then, they've already known about Ira Hobbs for at least a decade. And so he's pleading with them. And he also mentions Horace Burgess, Roy Dietzel, and Kenneth Walleen. They might have, were they overseers, Cherie?
No.
They were not? Okay. But all brother workers who also had allegations of child sex abuse and sex assault. So this dad is pleading with the workers to take care of these guys. And worker Murray Keene told Dale that he was out of place in these matters, and he was told to quit talking about the abuse. And Dale had an Uncle Tom, a worker up in Canada, and they sent Uncle Tom down to talk to Dale. And he told him, this has happened many times in Canada, and the girls get over it. We can't put the workers out because we need the workers. We have so few workers, we need the workers. So, and I love this quote. I put this in here. Dale's brother said to him, "The only thing worse than men who represent themselves as ministers of God and molest children is a group of Christian people who allow such evil men to continue as ministers of the group." And I think we all agree with that statement. Dale did not shut up, and he was subsequently excommunicated from meetings. So his letter will, it's been online for a number of years, but it'll be embedded in this document. And I highly recommend that you read it for yourself to see how hard he was fighting with these workers to get Ira Hobbs removed.
I want to go repeat what that year was again.
It was in the 1980s.
Ira had been preaching in Colorado from 74 to 87. And after Dale Gardner's ruckus, Ira was moved to Kentucky for the next year, 88 to 89, and then to Louisiana from 90 to 97, and then to Texas for 98 to 2008. And then in 2000, he was made overseer of Texas after William Lewis passed away suddenly. Back to Jean. In March of 2003, Jean Trotter Austin was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, had a radical mastectomy and reconstruction. Chemo, radiation, and other treatments made her overweight, bald, very sick and depressed. She started seeing a therapist for her depression to question Jean about her childhood, home life, religion, and other things. Jean confided to the therapist that she'd been sexually molested by a preacher for 7 to 8 years when she was a child. The therapist was very kind and helpful, and she encouraged Jean to let go of the burdens of her past by writing a letter to her abuser. So, after 40 years after the abuse happened, Jean wrote a letter letting it all hang out, telling how Ira Hobbs had ruined her life and about all the misery she had suffered, and railing out about his faults, his poor personal hygiene, but she didn't have his address to mail the letter. So she Googled his name, and she discovered that there was a message board called Truth Meeting Message Board, and his name had come up on there. And without knowing anything about the board, she posted her letter on it on September 17, 2006. Her letter is in the documents, the link to it, which is on my website, Expressions. Well, her letter caused a huge stir. Replies on the message board filled up several pages, and her letter somehow made it back to Ira. A month later, in October 18, 2006, he wrote her an apology. That apology is also in a link that is in the document. But Jean didn't consider it much of an apology. She said his letter was all about him and contained lies. He wrote, I recognize that in my association with you, there was too much human interest that diminished from my purpose of promoting spiritual growth. There were times that my behavior with you was not the ideal actions of a servant of God because of carelessness and casualness that developed. When I read Jean's letter posted on the Truth Message Board, that's also referred to as the TMB, I immediately recalled meeting Jean and her parents, seeing them what that picture showed. Both our families were in Florida, and I contacted her and encouraged her to write her story. Told her she might find it therapeutic and help others, and I offered to help her write it. Using only email, Jean wrote me bits and pieces of her horrific life over several months, and I wove them into a chronological account that I posted online on my website, Expressions. Her story is in a link also. In 2007, within a year after she posted her letter on the Wings Truth Group was formed and launched their website featuring Jean's life story. They began advocating on Jean's behalf to get Hobbs removed from the work. They located other girls he had abused and presented the case to. They presented the case of all of these victims to the U.S. overseer over Eastern U.S. at the time. My husband and I were a part of that original Wings group that was founded then. There were 7 of us. So Ray Hoffman told Jean that one reason the workers believed her story was because of her description of Ira's private parts, as someone else had described them the same way. In October 2007, a year after Jean's letter went public, Ray Hoffman was installed as overseer of Texas and New Mexico, and Hobbs was demoted to his under companion. In 2008, on May 13, Hobbs was expelled from the work. Reportedly, Ray Hoffman gave him $100,000. In 2009, Ira married Joan Wilson Stevens, an ex-sister worker, widow in the church, and they moved to Missouri. Also in 2008, Joe Trapp, a 2x2 Texan man, interceded for Jean. He pressured Ray Hoffman to make it right with Jean's father, who had never believed her that she was abused. And she badly wanted her family to believe her. That's very important to victims, to be believed. So Ray asked Joe, what do you think would satisfy Jean? Joe mentioned admission, public apology, Ira stepping down, making things right with her family. Ray replied he thought $10,000 might satisfy her, and that he knew she probably needed some help with medical expenses. On 2008, at Joe Trapp's encouragement, Ray, accompanied by Charles Vaughn, the overseer of Georgia at the time, met with Jean's parents and Jean and assured them that she was telling the truth, that she really had been abused. And at the end, Ray gave Jean a bag with $10,000 cash in it. Well, Jean was upset and felt like that was quit talking about it money. And Joe told her, though, that she should definitely not feel that she needed to be quiet about it. On 2008, Ray Hoffman, overseer of Texas, distributed a notification letter to all the Texas and New Mexico friends stating that he wished to end the speculation and rumors as to why Ira Hobbs was no longer in the work. He openly stated that he was under investigation for child sexual abuse, and several women had made complaints. The letter can be read. In the document, there is a link to it. Reportedly, Ray compared his sending out of the notification letter about Ira CSA as being comparable to the Levite, cutting his abused and murdered concubine into 12 pieces and sending her pieces throughout the country of Israel in Judges 19. A former worker commented that Ray's comparison seemed as if Ray considered Ira Hobbs the victim, and he was very sorry he had to make Ira's sins openly known to the church, rather than having true empathy and care for the survivors who suffered Ira's abuse. How the mighty are fallen. Currently, Jean's health is in poor condition. Her surgery in the fall removed a large brain tumor that left her in a wheelchair bound, unable to speak, yet able to barely feed herself, residing in an assisted living facility. She's now 74 years old.
Yeah, so now we skip forward to 2019, but I just kind of want to reiterate that allegations against Ray Hoffman were known for 30 years before he was made overseer of Texas. For 30 years.
Against
and then
Ira Hobbs, you said.
Oh,
the allegations against Ira were known for 30 years before he was made overseer. Yes.
Yes. Before he was made overseer, which is astounding. Yeah. So, and then the bag of cash, I mean, got to point that out too. Who operates with bags of cash. Anyhow, so 2019, Ira was never removed from meetings. There was never any accountability along those lines. No safety measures put in place around him whatsoever. So in 2019, sister worker Katie Kime was placed in his home on special meeting rounds. And after she'd been in his home, she started having some medical complications, went to the doctor, and they discovered that she had been sexually assaulted and needed some serious medical attention. And they also discovered that she'd been roofied. So that was reported to law enforcement and an investigation was opened. In 2019, the owners of the Clever, Missouri Convention grounds banned Hobbs from attending convention, and that letter is available here as well. And we understand they had no idea he was under investigation at that time. They didn't know about Katie Kime. In 2021, even after Katie Kime's case was known to the workers, they know Ira Hobbs is under investigation. They're having gospel meetings in Ira Hobbs' home. And we have a letter from the workers that you'll be able to read with your own eyes announcing gospel meeting in Ira Hobbs' home. And then in 2024, even after the brewer, exposure got all this going and there's this crisis ongoing, Hobbs is having meetings in his home, even in 2024, a year after the brewer letter came out. And you'll be able to see the letter there from Ira himself about the meetings in their home. So sadly, Katie Kime died very recently. You might want to talk about that, Crystal, on May 23rd.
Yeah, so we did a vigil here on survivor rights for Katie as she was nearing the end. It was, I want to thank everybody for participating in that. I do want to also say that at the very end, Jean and Katie were able to FaceTime one another as victims of Ira Hobbs, and it was a very emotional time for both of them. But yeah, basically what we're discussing tonight again is the culture of abuse. Culture, culture, culture. All of these decisions, zero accountability. This is the way it's done. Do whatever you want to do. There's not going to be any consequences for it. So, yes, Katie did die as a active worker. Well, was on the resting list, obviously, due to her illness, but it was what Katie's last wish, I want to say this loud and clear, was that this culture would stop, that the abuse would stop, that the lies would stop.
Yep. Okay, so now we're moving on to Ruben Mada, who was a California worker, and I think he was also in Mexico. Anyhow, in 1996, an allegation was put forth. Somebody told a worker that he had abused a boy, and nothing happened with that allegation. Then sometime between 1996 and 1999, another allegation was brought to workers. Nothing happened. 1999, a third case is brought to workers. No actions taken. So we got 3 allegations. In 2000, finally, those allegations make their way to Dick Middleton, who was the overseer in California at the time. And Dick Middleton confronts Ruben Mada, and Mada stepped down from the ministry. And reportedly, Elder Ray Bullock and worker Steve Pearson accompanied Mada to the Tulare County DA's office in California, and Ruben confessed. It's interesting trying to chase that story a little more and find out how it could be that somebody went in to confess to 20 years of abusing boys, and nothing happened. But anyhow, supposedly Tulare County made some courtesy filings with some other counties, and they were supposed to sit and wait, I guess. But the point is, they didn't tell anybody. They didn't tell anybody. They just kept it to themselves. And so my understanding is he continued to attend meetings, and that could be special meetings and gospel meetings and conventions. I'm not totally sure about that, but if people who were around back then can weigh in, that'd be great. So then in 2006, Ruben Mada is reported in Santa Clara County, California, and he's arrested. And so now Dale Schultz has to deal with this. It's out, right? They've known for 10 years. 1996 is when the first allegation came forward. So now they got to deal with it. So I would say that Dale Schultz's letters make it pretty obvious that damage control was his #1 priority. There is no care shown for survivors. It's all about preserving the image. So these letters are embedded here. You'll be able to read them. I highly encourage you to do that. But so one of the things that Dale did is that his staff was to only show the letter to people who asked about Mada's abuse, and to not leave copies of it with anyone. And that there may be rare cases to show it to someone who is not professing, perhaps the victim. However, if you're going to do that, you need to check with the senior brother workers. So basically, don't show it to anybody, and don't tell anybody unless they ask. And I can tell you, there are people that met with Ruben Mada that had no idea these letters existed until 3 years ago when this crisis started. So they did a good job of keeping a lid on it. So Dale also asked, we will ask you not to make any copies of this letter. To have one letter available in each field is certainly adequate. If we are not particularly careful with letters such as this, they can end up on an internet site for all the world to read. Also, to show this letter to people who do not need to see it may arouse concerns that they had not previously entertained. The purpose of this letter is to help those who have concerns, not to advertise a kingdom problem to those who either do not know about it or are not having a problem with it. A kingdom problem. So the guidelines, Dale Schultz put together some guidelines and he distributed them to his staff at the time. And those guidelines, and they're embedded in here, you'll be able to read them. They had 4 reporting options. The first one is to send the perp to a counselor or the victim, either one. And it makes it pretty clear that if you do that, it puts the reporting responsibility on the therapist, not the workers, which was actually not the law in 2006 in California. Clergy were mandated reporters in 2006 in California. And if you have a suspicion that somebody's been abused, you are supposed to report. You don't have to know somebody's been abused. You have to have suspicion that somebody's been abused. So you can read his guidelines and see what those were all about yourself. So then actually Ruben Mada was arrested, convicted, and went to prison. And he died in 2007. He was sentenced to 36 years to life, died in 2007. In 2014, a Mada survivor contacted his family trying to get help. And so that family, of course, reached out to the workers. And what they really wanted was for the ministry to make a public statement, a public moral statement. And they wanted to go to all of the places where Ruben Mada had been and warn people. The survivors' whole thing was he did not want this happening to anybody else. And the ministry responded that they could not make a moral statement due to their enemies. In December of 2014, Schultz wrote an email to some of his advisors discussing this victim, and you'll be able to see that letter. It's embedded in here. And he says the family is on a mission to obtain some definite assurance that steps are being taken to lessen the probability of such events ever happening again. And Schultz states that we see this as an overreaction on the part of the parents and do not have any plan to carry that out. You can read it for yourself. Yep. We see this as an overreaction on the part of the parents and do not have any plan to carry that out. The letter is heavy on damage control verbiage and non-existent on any showing of care or sympathy to survivors or their families or accountability. So in the end, the workers told that family that God did not speak to them, and they left meetings. So all of those letters and the guidelines will be embedded in here, and you can read them for yourself. It's pretty horrific.
So I just want to be clear again. Here we are with a perp that is convicted, goes to jail, and the family ends up leaving meetings. So I just want to clarify that we are not talking about saving souls here, right? I mean,
right.
Okay. Just
right.
clarify. Anything else on Mr. Ruben Mada?
No, just the cover up. I mean, that they knew for so long and didn't tell anybody. And then when they did know, it's like a pretense that you're letting people know. They do all this stuff in the background, but really they didn't let anybody know. If they ask what happened to Ruben Mada, maybe they would know, but they really did not want to let people know what had happened. What's really so tragic about that is that families had kids who were really struggling and they didn't know why.
Right.
Yeah.
How long was he in prison?
Died pretty shortly. I want to say it was less than 2 years.
That's what I was thinking.
Or a year. Yeah. It's a pretty short time. I tried to figure out.
We don't know what of, right?
I tried to figure out. Yeah.
Child abusers don't last long in prison usually.
No.
So I just also want to be clear to the workers and anybody that's listening out there that is trying to reconcile all of this. When you leave somebody in the work and don't report to authorities for decades again, and then when Dean Brewer happened and they're trying to deny, you start getting calls, your phone starts ringing off the hook. It's people who have been dealing with this for decades, and nobody believed, nobody listened to, nobody let them come forward. Their families were excommunicated, and they wonder why the numbers are so high. It's because we're talking about, we're only on the second one, people. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I told you this was not going to be fun. Second one so far. It gets worse. So yes, this document that we keep referring to, we've decided it's just too much for one night. Just listening to it is going to be hard enough. We will be releasing that document first thing in the morning, and you all will be able to go and look at every single one of these specific screenshots and scanned in letters, word for word, for yourself. And that's what we hope. Our hope is that you all will read these letters for yourself so that you can clearly know what the investigative process looks like and why we're taking this so seriously.
The other thing I want to mention is that, and think about this throughout, is that when the crisis started in 2023, we heard over and over and over again from workers, this is new to us. This is all new to us. We don't know how to deal with that, with this. Well, that's bullshit. And you'll be able to see for yourself. They've known about this for a long, long, long time, and they've dealt with it.
They are.
Not in the right way, but yeah.
Correct. Shannon Butcher's out here saying, when we say workers really is more specific in that it's overseers and senior workers, young workers and sister workers. Again, leadership sets the tone. And that's why we called this show Our Overseers Culpable.
Yes.
That's where we're going to land at the end of this night. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's up to leadership to train the younger workers about reporting and all that stuff. So it's really about the leadership. Yeah.
Okay, Bruce, Mr. Noel Tanner.
Well, thanks for this one. This situation occurred in Northern Ireland. And I think that as we go through some of these cases, we're going to discover that in every one of these cases, we're going to see that cover-up is a standard practice. We have evidence of cover-up in most cases, but in all cases, we can see that there is no transparency at all in a broad sense. So it will be in this case. I think we'll see this element in every case that comes up tonight. So this is about a worker by the name of Noel Tanner in Northern Ireland. He had 3 convictions in total. He was a prolific offender. The primary victim that we're going to talk about with is tonight is Robert is his name, and he personally knows nearly 15 of Tanner's victims, and there is a standard multiple in this line of work that if you know 12 to 15, Cynthia, you probably know that number is 10 times or 20 times. This man may well have hundreds of victims. Just when one person knows of 12 to 15, the total number, it can easily be hundreds. And so this is what happens when things are covered up. The practice of abusing children just carries on and on and on. It doesn't stop. One of the things about this particular case that I think is particularly outstanding is that there were letters with regards to child abuse a little bit earlier than this. This particular story was published in 1996 online, so that was very early on in the internet, and so this is probably the first one that was really broadly published by the victim. And when I read it not long after that, it really struck me quite forcefully that. I mean, I had already known about a number of cases on a whisper basis, but to really see the courage of the survivor to come right out in public and tell his story with regards to this abuse, it really struck me, and it had a lot to do with me joining Wings in 2010. I became friends with the victim, Robert, and friends today. And so have just a huge amount of respect for his courage and strength to bring his story out into the public. So getting into the story, I'll just maybe give you an idea as to the ending of the convictions. The three convictions of Noel Tanner, 1984, 1991, and 2015. So that's another indication of the prolific activities that he was into. So there's gonna be two victims that I'll mention. Robert, that's his real name, and then there's Peter, that's not his real name. And most of the other names are kind of just sort of on the edge of the story. But anyway, in 1974-75, that was the time when Robert was sexually abused by Noel Tanner. So he had a very difficult time in 76 with regards to basically a mental breakdown. And he told his father about the CSA that he had experienced. His father believed him, which was very admirable. And so he called the father of a close relative, and the relative's name was Peter, pseudonym Peter, thinking he might be a victim. It turned out that Peter did confirm that he was also a victim. So Robert's father and Peter's father reported the abuse to the senior Irish workers. Peter's dad compiled a written statement about the CSA, the abuse, and then there was a meeting after that involving the overseer named Hugh Payne and some senior Irish workers, along with Tanner and the two parents, was held in Omagh County. And so both parents, they presented their evidence, including their written statement. And Tanner claimed his rebuttal was that he had been just teaching Robert about the facts of life. And then he turned around and made false accusations against Robert, saying that he claimed that he was reading a pornographic book. And in fact, the book was a volume of the Children's Encyclopedia Britannica that he had pushed under his pillow. And he tried to turn me on his back. I mean, so yeah, that's sort of how a bit of insight on how some of these predators will defend themselves is that they end up attacking the victim. And often, when you have a fairly smooth, well-known predator, very often people will take their word for it over a child. And they think the child is not reliable witness at all. So anyway, the workers asked for the written statement, and Robert understands it was simply destroyed and buried. So Tanner's companion, his name was Bertie McKay, was told to take Tanner across the border from Northern Ireland to the Republic of Ireland so that he was out of the legal jurisdiction in which his crimes were committed. So Peter's father was involved in law enforcement, so the workers may have feared that he would report Tanner to the police. So that would be the reason for moving him into the Republic of Ireland. As you know, the Republic of Ireland is its own country, and Northern Ireland is part of the UK. So Tanner was never removed from the work, even though there was at least two reports, and he appeared on later workers' lists. He labored in Dublin in 76, 77. During his time in Dublin, Tanner, he abused at least one young boy that's known. And this particular victim contacted Robert years later and was astounded and very angry to discover that Tanner had previously been reported to the workers. So this is another example of what the damage the cover-up does, is that it allows the abuse to continue on and on and on. So as far as Robert understands it, he also believes or has no awareness that any of the overseers even informed the junior workers with regards to Tanner's multiple allegations against him. So everybody was in the dark, including many of the younger workers. Robert is only aware of one of the friends, church members that was informed. It happened to be the wife of the elder in Peter's Sunday morning meeting, and she knew Tanner had been moved south, and that Peter's family was involved somehow, and she imagined that Tanner was involved in a affair with someone. And so in order to straighten out that story, they told that person the real story about the sexual abuse. So that was how they managed to save the reputation of one person of two people, really at the expense of a victim. So somewhere around 879, 80, Noel Tanner was assigned to a Limerick area and Noel Tanner by this time was the senior of the pair. So not only had he had all these allegations against him, he was promoted and fully reinstated as senior worker just 3 years after his crimes were known. So in the early 1980s, Tanner was reported to the Republic of Ireland police for abuse of a non-2x2 child, and he was convicted in 1984. So it's moving on in the so he shows up in the 1982-83 list. He's on the bottom of the list with no explanation as to why he's there. And as far as we know, he didn't show up in any other workers lists after that. So in 82-83, clearly the management or the leadership knew that a lawsuit was coming, and he was convicted in 84 on that particular one. In 1991, Tanner was convicted for an act of gross indecency in the Republic of Ireland. And then in 2015, Robert reported Tanner to the Northern Ireland police. And Tanner was extradited from Republic of Ireland into Northern Ireland. And he entered a guilty plea, convicted in 2016, sentenced to 1 year in prison, served 6 months, and he died in 2020. To this day, not one worker has ever reached out to Robert with regards to any concern for his well-being. And as we all know, the CSA has a tremendous effect on people, very often for a lifetime. And even if it is 20 years later, you would still think that after this conviction that somebody would pick up the phone and ask him how he's doing. But absolutely none of that. In 1994, Robert's parents were excommunicated for having a television. And that's kind of a stark reminder of how such a minor thing becomes so important and a major thing gets covered up. It's almost mind-blowing to think of, because in an exclusive religion, when you excommunicate somebody, it's believed that you are assigning them to hell. And to assign somebody to hell for a TV is kind of mind-blowing, whereas you hang on to these abusers. And in the meantime, they're putting their victims into a living hell. So this experience was published in 1996, and it is still on the Wings website. And as a result of that publication, there was many CSA victims contacted Robert, talked to him. So that's where the 12 to 15 numbers came from with regards to what Robert knows. And so that multiplier again could go into the hundreds for Tanner, just because it was left unmitigated, led on to carry on. So if the workers had acted correctly reporting to Tanner, informing their friends and expelling from the work, it's quite likely that there would have been far fewer opportunities to abuse. So when you think of culpability, there it is right there. We can see it with such a prolific abuser and just let to go free, basically. There was a couple of other things that I was thinking of, Panners. Yeah. One of the things that there was one overseer that Robert viewed as a good one, and he did express. No, this wasn't the good one. This was another one. He expressed at one time with regards to Robert's allegations. Did Tanner really do anything? And just expressing that doubt. And then Robert mentioned that there was another worker that approached him and said that he was the problem. Robert was the problem. So, all this putting down, and really it's almost re-abusing the abusers, not just the cover-up, but the denial and putting the cause of all these problems onto the victim. And so it's just re-victimizing them. So that's basically the story, and as I say, it's a standard practice universally to cover these up, and we can talk about maybe in August about why they do that. We know that primarily it's about the image, but there's all kinds of other reasons why they do that, and but anyway, this is the story, and I've known Robert for a long time, spent a day with him in Belfast in 2009, and completely credible person, intelligent and credible. And I really appreciate that he had the courage to bring out his story the way he did.
Robert, if you're out there listening tonight, man, we love you. I mean, we believe you. We love you. We got you. Thank you. Okay, Cherie, Paul Jennastar.
My husband and I went to Ireland in 2004, and Robert and his wife hosted us for 2 or 3 days, and he toured us all around Northern Ireland, and just treated us wonderfully. And he has been a tremendous help to me in acquiring historical 2x2 material. He has managed to get the John Long diary. That's one of the biggest pieces of evidence of the starting and founding. Okay.
I was appreciating the fact that in 2009 I was able to also visit the John Long diary and held it in my hands, and I totally believed Cherie's reports on it, but I always wanted to be able to say to people, I don't have to believe Cherie. I saw it. The history is real. Mm-hmm. So, just sort of added credibility to it to be able to see it and feel it. It's, written over 100 years ago, and it's quite a fascinating story.
I just want to be very clear to anybody out there that hasn't read her book. This church was started by William Irvine, and she has proven it multiple times over. Go ahead, Cherie, the floor is yours.
Well, Robert took, I'm sure, Bruce and also us to John Long's grandson, where the diaries are kept, and that's why he's saying he went to see him. I held them in my hands too and felt just awe. But Robert took slides of the diary and transmitted them to me, and I typed them. I mean, he's the one that really copied it. So he's a hero for me. All right, Paul Jennastar. Rebecca Jennastar was a Baldwin baby born in June of 1969. She was adopted by former workers Paul and Helen Jennastar in Oregon. She was the youngest of 4 adopted children. She was 14 before she discovered who she really was, the daughter of a Texas sister worker, Catherine Crane, who was allegedly raped while preaching in Mexico. Rebecca and her sister both professed at the same time. She was 7 and her sister was 8. They did it to please their parents. Rebecca couldn't even read her Bible at the time, had to get her parents to tell her something to say. Paul Jennastar was the elder both of Sunday and Wednesday meetings, and he built a dormitory on his place for the workers, and they hosted a lot of the foreign workers, as he was from Morocco and they knew foreign languages. And he sexually abused his 2 adopted daughters from the time they were toddlers into their teenage years. And over time, he also abused 3 other young girls. When the workers came, Paul would proudly show them his collection of paddles, switches, and whips hanging on the wall and boast, "That's how we control the children." The children were allowed to choose their choice of pain. And when one of them got in trouble, often all 4 of them got whipped. So fast forward, in 1993, after reading my life story in the book Reflections, Rebecca called and told me about her shocking life. After graduating from high school, she left meetings. She married a divorced man, and they had 2 small children at that time. When she wanted to reprofess, sister worker Karen Oakes told her only if she divorced her husband would she have a chance of getting to heaven or be able to participate in meetings. So Rebecca wanted to go to heaven. She divorced him. After she'd paid the price of $9,000 for her divorce, or for her salvation, she soon learned that wasn't good enough to get the privilege of speaking in meetings. She had assumed it was, and she went to the Oregon Convention, and she participated there. And afterwards, Joyce, I don't know how you pronounce her last name, Zach or something, grabbed her arm and said, "Don't you think you should wait to take part until you have been told you could? And I really think you need to wait a year." That was the only time she took part. Later, Rebecca found herself in a desperate financial situation, needed money fast for food, utilities, and mortgage payments that were crashing down on her. As a last resort, she went to work for a month as an exotic dancer. She danced all night Saturday and then cried all through a meeting on Sunday. I strongly encouraged her to write her life story, that it would be therapeutic for her and would be helpful to others. And she says it very, 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 very much was the case. I ended up ghostwriting it for her by transcribing her phone calls that I tape recorded. And so that's why I'm telling you about her abuser, Paul. When Rebecca first disclosed her abuse to a professing confidant, she was not believed. Later, she reported it to worker John Sterling, who was very close to the family. And John's response was, "As you know, the truth is not orthodox, Becky, and this could destroy the truth as you know it. So we have to be careful that this information does not get into the wrong hands." In February of 1996, ex-2x2 Bob Daniel heard of Paul Jennastar's abuse and contacted the Oregon overseer Harold Bennett, expressing his concern, as he had family members who attended Jennastar's meeting. Bob strongly encouraged the matter be referred to appropriate law agencies and gave Bennett 10 days to do so before Bob would take action. Within the 10 days, Bennett replied to Bob, and it'll be in a PDF document. "You should know that he has been relieved of his eldership and that the meeting that once met in his home has been moved to another location. The sister workers have spent quite a lot of time visiting with the saints in the area, so they will also be aware of the nature of Paul's offenses. And he's been seeing a counselor to obtain the needed professional therapy for help to rise above his problem. In accordance with Oregon law, the counselor has notified the appropriate authorities of the situation." Paul was never charged or arrested. Fellowship meetings were removed from his home. However, he was still allowed to attend all meetings, including special meetings and conventions, and to take part in them. Concerned about further damage to young girls, and since workers had failed to warn all the Oregon friends, Rebecca took it upon herself. And at the 1996 Saginaw, Oregon Convention, she posted flyers all along the road up to the convention grounds. And she walked up and down, talking with people to alert them about the potential danger of a child molester being on the grounds. You won't be surprised to know that her father and mother and sister and husband packed up and left right away. The local newspaper heard about Rebecca's action and wrote an article. Overseer Harold Bennett was quoted. That person has been causing us a lot of difficulties, so we're not interested in anything connected with her. We're not interested in any kind of article of any kind of association with her. In August of '96, Rebecca requested a meeting with Harold Bennett, overseer of Oregon, and invited workers and friends who were interested in discussing how to take protective measures so other young girls would not become victims of her father. She asked my husband, Chester Eric, to facilitate the meeting since she felt she would be too emotional. Instead of Harold, John Sterling and Tom Hinkle came. They refused to take any action because they didn't have the authority to do so, they said. Their concern was mainly to support Paul Jennastar's continued attendance at this meeting for his own salvation. Ronald and Wanlin Chapman attended and compiled a detailed summary of the meeting. Their summary will be in the document. By the time Rebecca was prepared to take her father to court and expose him, the statute of limitations had expired. Paul and Helen Jennastar subsequently moved to Utah, where one of their sons were living. Reportedly, Paul was made the elder of a meeting which included children, and it's our understanding that none of the families were warned that Jennastar had committed crimes against children. Rebecca died of cancer in 2013. She was 44 years old. Paul Jennastar died in 2021. Please read the full account of Rebecca's heartbreaking story that I helped put together. It's a lengthy one, but an important read. It's in the documents.
Thank you, Cherie. Cynthia, Robert Corfield.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that the Jennastars moved to Utah, and he was made an elder in Utah. Nobody was warned.
Out of state. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Nobody was warned. Children were in his meetings. So, okay, Robert Corfield. So, my now very good friend, Michael Havitt, was abused by Robert Corfield, starting when he was 12 years old. And between 1994 and 1996, he confided in some close friends of his about the abuse. Because Corfield abused him from about 12 years old to 18 years old. So he told some friends about the abuse, and his friends said, you have to tell Dale Schultz. If you don't tell Dale Schultz, we're going to tell Dale Schultz. So Dale Schultz was told, a meeting was arranged, and Michael thought, he was about 25 years old at the time, and he thinks he's going to these convention grounds and he's going to meet with Dale Schultz. Well, he's shocked and horrified to get there, and he's meeting with Dale Schultz and Robert Corfield and another worker. So they take him into this room. They have water. No water is ever offered to Michael. This meeting goes on for hours. Bob Kovlin is the other worker there. And so he's forced to confront Corfield about his abuse. And Corfield takes responsibility for his abuse of Michael. And he also admitted that he had sexual relationships with some of his companions. And it was Michael that Schultz were Soul and Corfield, okay. So Kovlin said many things to Michael, kind of a contributing fault to him, things like, well, you're dirty, you're unclean, and so horrible meeting. Schultz told Michael that he was never to speak of the abuse again. He says, it's not a problem. This is not a problem. It was just you. It was just you. So think about that for a minute. If you were told that as a survivor, don't worry about it. It's not a problem. It's just you. So, shortly after that, group of the friends was meeting Liles Schultz, coming back from some travels at the Regina airport. And Michael was part of that crowd. And when Schultz saw him, so one trusted that I'd spoken with at some point or another called Dale Schultz about the abuse. It was after Michael had disclosed. So Schultz knows that Michael told somebody. So Schultz sees him at the airport and grabs him by the front of the shirt, slams him up against a concrete post, would split the back of Michael's head open, and yelled at him, I told you not to talk to anyone. So after that, like a year later, within months maybe, Corfield is sent to Montana, sent out of Canada to Montana. 1999, Corfield sends Michael a letter from Montana, and Michael was really upset to think that he's now in the work in Montana, in people's homes, access to kids. And sometime between 2000 and 2004, I think closer to 2000 probably, Michael contacted Montana overseer Jack Price and told him, he abused me. You got to get him help. I'm worried sick. He's a confessed pedophile. And Jack Price told Michael he did not know that. He was upset that he had not been told. So you will be able to read that letter. The 1999 Corfield letter to Michael is embedded in here as a PDF. Sometime after Michael reported to Jack Price, Schultz approached Michael and told him he didn't think the truth was a place for him. And Michael took that to mean he was no longer welcome in meetings and excommunicated. In 2004, Corfield wrote a letter to Michael thanking him for disclosing his abuse to Jack Price and Dale. He mentions Dale in there too. And he apologizes for the abuse and says, you're the only one. You're the only one. And you'll be able to read that letter. In 2005, Corfield writes Michael to let him know he's treating with professing psychiatrist or therapist Denise Kirkpatrick in Montana, professing therapist. And he's making a list of his victims. And in that letter, he discloses that he has many victims. He's making a list. And he needs Michael's help with this therapy. And Denise would like his help too. And here's a form that Denise wants you to fill out that you can send back to her. So you can consult with her about the so you'll be able to read that letter. It's in this document. So this case, Michael comes forward 1994, sometime between 94 and 96. And they don't tell anyone. And they know for a long time. Dale Schultz knows. Bob Coughlin knows. Probably other workers in Canada know. Eventually, Jack Price knows. Denise Kirkpatrick knows. And they know that he has abused, that he's admitted to abusing multiple boys. And they don't tell anyone. And Robert Corfield stayed in the work until 2023. When Michael Havoc came forward. So all those years. So more cover up.
I just want to be very, yes, I want to first honor Michael. I don't know if you're watching, Michael, but you are my friend and I love you and I honor you. We all do. I know that this has not been an easy road, but with that said, I want to also say that Michael or Robert Corfield is still being protected by and housing, clothing, all of those things by the professing people in Montana. You can read about that on your own, but the letters, when you read the letters that Robert Corfield sent to Michael Havoc, you will, I'm gonna warn you again. That's why we're not putting it out tonight. It's too much. You will be sick to your stomach. I'm telling you. Okay, let's
yeah,
move on.
And I'm gonna point out just real quickly, Crystal, because it's really hard to read. The one he sends him in 1999, Michael's been excommunicated by Dale Schultz, told him he didn't think the truth was placed for him. Robert Corfield says, I'm sorry to hear the PA folk don't see much of you. I really thought you had more stick to it than that. So he's giving Michael crap for not going to meeting.
That's how they treat survivors, okay? I just want to be super clear with everybody that's watching out there tonight. This is not an isolated event.
Yeah.
This is not a one-time thing. This is the culture of this church. Okay?
Yeah.
We're talking about 13 people here tonight. You don't even want to know what we're going to talk about next. So go ahead. Next.
Well, we might.
We got to stay on track here. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
we better speed her up.
Yeah, we got to speed this up. Bruce Wedell.
So
You're on-
oh,
No, you're not. You're not now.
oh, okay. No, good. Okay. Yeah, Bruce Wedell is a case that's kind of close to me. Similar age to me. We brought up in the same province. And his brother has been a close friend for over 50 years. We roommated 1 year together in university in Winnipeg, and we remain close friends today. And I know the whole family. They grew up on the Portage Convention grounds in Manitoba. And Bruce went into the work, and two sisters are in the work still. And the brother, the friend of mine, took over the convention grounds for quite a few years. Not on it anymore, but it's a very the family was very involved in the church in a very serious way. So, but it's very, very personal to me because I know them all personally. So Bruce, just to start at the convictions end of it, he was convicted in 2010 of child sexual assault stemming from an incident on a 7-year-old child in 2004. After the trial, he publicly admitted to the media that there were others. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but definitely this is another prolific abuser. And evidence suggests that this started as a teenager in the late 1960s. So there is evidence that that the abuse started way back then and carried on. In this particular case of the conviction of the abuse that occurred in 2004, less than 2 years after the abuse, he was removed from the work. No one knew why. And so one of the family members directly asked the overseer, Elton Mose, what was the reason why his brother was taken off the workers list. Elton Mose emphatically stated that it was for health reasons. So anyway, Bruce was sent out of the province of Manitoba to Saskatchewan into Saskatoon, where no one was informed of his crime, and he had significant freedom among the church and children. He was enrolled in therapy for paraphilia around 2005. Some workers became aware of it and were very uncomfortable with him being in Saskatoon. And at least one sister worker pleaded with the overseers to send him back to Manitoba to face prosecution. After his trial, Wedell told reporters that it was his therapist who encouraged him to turn himself in, which he did. But this is a similar pattern to what we heard about tonight in California, where the plan was to push perpetrators into therapy so that the therapist takes care of the reporting or taking the action that is appropriate and taking off any of the requirements from the people who really should be doing the reporting. So anyway, this was all kept quite secret. Nobody knew about it until the trial came up, and it was quite a shock for a lot of people. Subsequent events. So another survivor wrote a short book on abuse by Bruce. The book was written around 2021, so quite recent. About 200 copies of this book went out to workers and others who were considered on a need-to-know basis. And subsequent to that book going out to everybody, there were several female workers and one male worker who responded with compassion by email. But the only visible reaction was about 18 months later when a particular worker took copies to a therapist to get advice on how to help. But from that, no action occurred. and of course, nothing from the leadership end of it. So the perpetrator or the victim, the survivor, was living in Alberta at the time, and overseer Mike Hassett claimed that he wanted to meet with the survivor, but he wanted to meet alone, which is, one of the worst things you can do. But when the survivor required that the spouse attend, Hassett never did have the meeting. So subsequent to that, the survivor stood up in Didsbury Convention and alluded to these abuses in convention testimony. Once the survivor started to talk about the abuses, the mic was quickly turned off so that the congregation couldn't hear it. There's a blatant cover-up right there. The survivor did continue on, but only the people around close by would have heard what she had to say. So Mr. Hassett, the overseer, was in attendance, and he would have been the one behind trying to shut the victim down from letting people know what happened. So in the bigger picture, one of the witnesses describes the Wedell's crimes, again, as I mentioned, starting in the late 1960s, personally knows nearly 15 victims, both boys and girls, suggesting, again, potentially hundreds of offenses over the years. And the probability of cover-ups that existed for a long, long time. We don't have evidence of cover-up prior to 2004, 2005, but the likelihood is quite high. And Bruce was allowed to continue to abuse for all those years, the 1960s right through to at least 2004. So not a great story. And again, that's the danger of cover-up. It just carries on and on.
Heartbreakingly sad. Cherie, Tim.
Tim Severin, this happened in Minnesota. In 2007, a 2x2 father in Minnesota home where Severin, a younger brother worker, was staying, walked in on Tim Severin sexually abusing his 10-year-old daughter. The father ordered Severin out of his home and called his sister, who was a sister worker. She immediately reported it. She had been abused herself. So she was ultra sensitive to this situation. Subsequently, after agonizing over the situation, Liles Schober, the Minnesota overseer, urged Severin to turn himself in, and he did so and was incarcerated. The friends were not notified that Severin had been arrested for child sex abuse. However, the young children of a former 2x2 couple had previously visited their 2x2 grandparents while Severin had been staying with them. And after they learned that he had been arrested, they became concerned that there might be other children Severin had abused who might need therapy. The mother reached out to me, and together we drafted an example letter. Subsequently, both parents, with ex-2x2 Scott Ross as a witness, met with Schober. Scott was one of the Wings founders, and he has passed. They expressed their concern to Schober and informed him that if he did not send out a similar notification to all the friends in Minnesota, they would do so themselves. They gave him 3 days to decide before they would act. Lyle used the letter almost verbatim and sent it in a timely manner to all the friends. To our knowledge, this was the first sex abuse notification letter of its kind distributed statewide in the U.S. Not long after that incident, 6 advocates formed Wings for Truth. Scott, myself, and the mother of this concerned family were 3 of them. To our knowledge, it was the first child sex abuse notification letter of its kind to be distributed. I said that. Please read the letter for yourself. It's an excellent letter, and we believe this notification system should have been used for all abuse notification cases going forward. The letter is on wings. Severed was convicted of child sexual abuse and incarcerated for 5 years from 2007 to 2012. Wings also has information on that. The link will be in the document. 2 years later, in Michigan, mugshot, brother worker Darren Briggs was sentenced to 180 days in jail, plus probation, for molesting a young boy in 2006. Reportedly, his co-worker, Bill Dink, drove Darren to meet Michigan overseer Jerome Frandl, who then drove Darren to Niagara Falls over state lines, where Darren's parents picked him up. And also in 2010, brother worker Peter Masseau was sentenced from 2 to 10 years in prison for sexually abusing 2 girls between 8 and 13 years in 1993 and 97. In 2011, overseer of Michigan, Jerome Frandl, that's his picture there, sent out a notification letter to the Michigan workers and friends about Briggs and Masseau. That letter is on Wings for Truth also. You Google Frandl, it'll turn up. Frandl and Dink failed to report the CSA to authorities, and they were both arrested. Jerome's pretrial defense was that he was not a minister or clergy, an absurd representation from someone in his position as an overseer. Frandl claimed he didn't know his lawyer was going to use that defense. One of the friends did an excellent job testifying against that defense, and the judge ruled from the bench that Frandl absolutely was a minister, member of the clergy. It was not a typical ruling for a hearing like that. In 2012, Jerome Frandl pleaded no contest and was sentenced to 100 hours of community service plus $200 fine and 4 days in jail, which was commuted to community service. You understand, he was the overseer of Michigan. And a year later, Bill Dink was convicted on the same charges and received the same sentence. And soon after that, Bill Dink wrote a notification letter to the Friends and Workers about their convictions, and that letter is also on Wings for Truth.
Jerome Frandl's still an overseer.
Yeah.
Not to respond to any allegations of abuse whatsoever.
Yeah, no, he got moved from Michigan. He's now an overseer somewhere else.
Yeah. Maybe he's got a co-overseer now, or I don't know. But anyhow, he was one just in up until the last couple of years. Johan Ray, I'll take him.
Yep.
Yeah. So in 1983, this is in South Africa. 1983, he assaults a 9-year-old girl. And that little girl, as an adult, came forward in 2010 and disclosed her abuse. I don't know how to say Trevor Lockle. You guys know how to say his last name? Trevor Lockle, Andy Robane, Johan Kotze, Dale Schultz was involved in South Africa, Dwayne Hopkins. So evidently Dale Schultz showed up in South Africa to help these guys with this allegation because they didn't have experience and Dale did. So that's 2010. Evidently, Dale's already got plenty of experience and he's going down there to help these guys. So at the time, Johan was in the work in South America. And so they sent him home from South America. And in 2012, 2 years after this allegations come forward, and he admits to assaulting her when she was 9 years old. Leroy Lurwick writes a letter to the survivor and her family asking them to let Johan come back to South America to be in the work. And you'll be able to read the letter for yourself. I've got some bullet points here, but this letter makes it clear that they have moved many workers around out of their country their home countries who have had problems Of course, they don't call it what it is. They've had trouble with their testimony. So I'll just read you some snippets. Where did these workers come from? USA, Europe, Canada, South Africa, Australia, Korea. Who were they? They were fragile human vessels that God was able to use. A few had not done well, and their testimony was such that they were not free to continue in the work in their home country. Many would have thought they should not have a place in the work anywhere. One such brother from Switzerland was given the opportunity to go to Peru, and we now can see that God's hand was in that arrangement, as he was the man with the courage and strength that was required to go to the high mountains, to an area known for its violence, where even the police did not venture. Scary. They put a problem in a place where the police didn't venture. So there's some other snippets in here, but the real corker is in the end, he says, this is not a plea specifically in favor of Johan Ray. Rather, it is a plea on behalf of the souls that are destined to perish for lack of laborers. Your response will be appreciated. So he put the weight of people's salvation on the survivor's shoulders. If she didn't let her abuser go back in the work in South America, souls were going to perish. So that's some pretty severe spiritual abuse right there. So you can read Leroy Lerwick's letter to the survivor and her family, and her letter back to Leroy is on here as well.
Bruce, Chris Chandler.
So this is another one that I've had some personal interaction with. In fact, all four of the ones I'm talking about tonight, I've known personally in one way or another. This is Chris Chandler from Australia. He was convicted of child sexual abuse in 2014. So this case is a little bit different than some of the others, because this particular abuse stems from some occurrences that happened several decades prior to, or sometime prior to, before he became involved in the 2x2 religion, where he became subsequently a minister. But so this went back quite a few years, I think maybe the 70s, and prior to any involvement in the ministry. There is evidence that he did disclose his past to the leadership, to the overseers, and he went back to the victim and apologized and claimed that she accepted it, and he considered the matter satisfactory, closed from there, and I believe that the leadership did as well. So after that, he as our system of the ministry living in homes, he still had allowed full access to children. And interestingly enough, he even positioned himself as a CSA advocate without disclosing his past. And that's where my intersection came in. He was fairly active in talking to us at Wings, and seemed to be one of the few that would, and seemed to be an advocate. And we don't know what his full intentions were. It could be the case of hiding in plain sight. We don't really know for sure. So anyway, we had other contact with him in around 2012, because around then I was tasked by Wings to coordinate the development of a code of conduct. And so what I did is, I don't have expertise in that area, but what I did is I contacted as many people as I could that did have expertise, and trying to get viewpoints from all directions. So law enforcement we had involved, and we had someone who had a tremendous amount of experience as a social worker in child abuse, and actually that particular person probably had input in maybe half of the code of conduct, and then others had smaller parts. But we invited Chris to have his input as well. And so here we had a child abuser giving input to code of conduct. If that's not hiding in plain sight, well, nothing is. If he had disclosed, that would be a different matter, but we had no idea at the time. I should say that if I recall, none of his input ended up in the code of conduct, but he was involved, and we had no idea. So we do have witness evidence, though, that this crime was known by the leadership in the past, and nothing was done about it. No one informed of the past. Danger is there, and so important for disclosure of these things.
Amen. I also just want to point out the code of conduct and how many people over the years have tried it. You mentioned it already, what they did in California when Ruben Mada happened, and Canada, where you are, Bruce, another code of conduct. Then the Grace report. That there is just, I want the pattern that I'm showing here is a lack of accountability, and that they're not going to change. If we're going to try to put any kind of rules or parameters around them on safety and security for children, they will absolutely refuse. It's not going to happen. Let's move on. We have a lot more to cover. Anything else you wanted to add on, Bruce?
No, but I should add on the code of conduct. In 2013, when it was completed, we sent it to every overseer and senior worker in the world that we had contact with. And the response we had, you can guess, 0. At the time, for years, the only senior worker that would talk to us was Liles Schober. And so we did have good communications with him, and it was him that we suggested the Ministry Safe program for workers, and so he did implement that in Texas amongst his staff. But here's that code of conduct, and I doubt that it was even read by many of them, if any at all. So that was the kind of response we got.
I also want to make the point here that you actively sought out, and I know this from you, professionals. You sought out people who knew for sure what they were doing in creating this code of conduct. You didn't just make it up willy-nilly. And so again, I want to repeat that the education or lack thereof of these ministers and overseers is appalling. They do not know what they do not know. And I used to give them grace on that because I thought, well, they just don't know what they don't know. Now, I have realized that they have been informed on multiple occasions and they are choosing not to listen. I want to very clearly state, when we first started talking about this event that we're doing tonight, we started using the language of, if you knew what we know, because we say this all the time, like between ourselves, it's like, it's so heavy sometimes. It's so much. And we just keep saying, well, if everybody else knew what we know. It didn't take us very long, Cynthia, to figure out it wasn't about what we know. And Bruce said that weight lays on the head of these overseers. It does not lay on us. So I just want to thank you again, Bruce, for helping us clarify and reframe how we were feeling about even doing this tonight. It's not
and for sure, there's no excuse.
No excuse.
Not for a long time. Maybe you could excuse them in the 1960s, maybe early 1970s, but today, no excuse.
No excuse. No.
And when you see that together, like, again, Wings has a lot of the information, telling the truth for Cherie has a lot of the information. Cynthia's put a lot of stuff out, but it's been kind of scattered all over the place. When you guys see this document tomorrow morning, and you see direct links to every single thing, if you want to watch back through this, go through it when you see it on a silver platter. I'm going to say this again. This is 13. Wait till we get to the end. Talk about the reality of it all. Cynthia, floor is yours. Michael Payne.
I did use that code of conduct very recently because I've been getting so much backlash on the Kenyon Coleman and Lauren Quick disclosures. And so I looked at that code of conduct, like if workers just keep your hands off the kids, right?
Yeah.
But it's all spelled out in there. Don't tickle, don't wrestle, just keep your hands off the kids. That'd be great. So Michael Payne, this one I'm going to make really short, but he assaulted a 14 or 15-year-old girl when he was in Russia. And instead of reporting him, Dale Benjamin sent him home and nothing was done. Stayed in the work for a while. then in 2008, there was a worker from Australia who had been there at the time, and it was really bothering him. And he started talking about it with people, and word got to Claudia Toppin about this allegation. So she reached out to Lyle Schober and Craig Winquist, and you can see their correspondence. It's all embedded here between the workers, and they confirm that something really serious happened. You can see it for yourself. And the reason I put this one in here is because even today, when he was made an elder of a meeting too, married an ex-sister worker, made the elder of a meeting in Colorado, which most of these guys are. Most of the perps who end up worker perps that leave meeting are made elders of meetings, and the workers know their perps. So he's made elder. So this crisis starts, and this becomes a problem because I'm making noise about this. And so I know that the workers in Colorado have told people that I'm lying today, presently, about this case.
Yes.
So people can see the correspondence for themselves. It's not, I think Michael Payne's story is he touched a girl on the leg, and you can see from their letters that it's more than touching a girl on the leg. It's something really serious happened. So that's why I included that one, because the cover up continues, right? It's always they're lying, all these are made up. That's part of the cover up culture.
Totally.
So that's that.
And I also just want to address that again. You said it, we're going to talk about it a little bit more, but they've made you, Cynthia Liles, the villain in their story. And there's a reason that they've done that. And we are clarifying tonight. Like, it's just because you're speaking truth. And until lately, you're the one out there beating the drum. So guess what?
Yeah. It's
not about Cynthia Liles, people.
tactic.
Read that letter. You will not believe your eyes. Okay, moving on. Bruce Burkenshaw.
So this is another one that I have personal intersection with in a number of dimensions. So Walter Burkenshaw, he was an overseer of BC, the province I live in, from 2008 to 2016, but also spent many years prior to being an overseer in BC. He did spend time in other provinces here and there, but he was in BC in the 80s. So we knew Walter quite well. So he's had multiple allegations of child sexual abuse. And in one particular case, I've personally been in contact with one of the survivors. Another survivor, whom I don't know, but alleged that Mr. Burkenshaw abused her in the 1970s. And so verbally, he tended to deny it. But in 2020, he wrote an email to his fellow ministers, and he confessed to handling the girl. And I think we can expect that is code for something more than just handling. And then in the same email, he spoke of the errors of his past, his repentance, and his need for forgiveness from God, just like everyone else. So downplaying what he's done as if everyone else needed the same forgiveness, and trying to put himself on the same level as everyone else, but nothing about the victim, no care, no offer of any kindness. He was certainly clearly more concerned about keeping his place in the church and forgiveness from God. So in the following year, in 2021, the current overseer of BC, Merlin Affleck, wrote what he called an open, honest, and transparent letter to his staff in BC. But the instructions were to share one copy only per elder in the various churches around BC, and that's leaving the bulk of the fellowship group in the dark. So the idea was to have the elders, and this is spoken right in the letter. The idea is to have the elders prepared in case anyone asks about it. So it's a protection of the system. And of course, that's not how transparency works. You don't restrict the information to a limited group. and while you keep the bulk of the people in the dark. When you read the letter, it just jumps right out at you that it claims to be transparent and then gives instructions to not be transparent. It's just, again, this is the practice, this is the culture. And so to our knowledge, the survivor that I've had contact with, the second allegation has not been disclosed to the broader community, if to anyone. All we know about, as far as disclosure goes, was the one from the 1970s. So another pattern of systemic cover-up.
It's the feature. Cherie, Leslie White.
Beginning in 2009, a couple named Beth and Tim Bolter began advocating on behalf of victims of Leslie White and pleading with overseers to address his predatory behavior. During their advocacy, they learned that in Colorado around the year 2000, a victim reported White to the workers for sexual assault. She pled with them to remove him from the ministry so he did not eventually rape someone. In 2010, Beth and Tim received a letter from Dwayne Hopkins urging them to remain silent. Put that on hold. In 2012, a sister worker accused White of raping her during preparations at Elizabeth, Colorado convention in 2003 when she was about 22 years old. She'd been in the work for 2 years and White was her overseer. He threatened her that if she ever spoke up, she'd be put out of the work and out of the meetings. He told her that if she talked, no one would believe her because of they'd believe him because of who he was. The atrocious handling of the allegation by the workers is covered in this document about the workers' use of a fraudulent psychiatrist to question the survivor. It's embedded in the PDF. The sister worker reported it to the Elbert County Sheriff's Office in Colorado in 2012. White was removed from the work in 2012. And the sister worker was told that he would never be in the work again. The next year, Beth Bolter was in conversation with another couple who were concerned about the lack of action taken by the ministry regarding White, and they were preparing a letter to overseers. You can read Beth's memo to that couple delineating known facts about White. On November 1, that couple wrote a letter to Barry, Ray, and Liles regarding Leslie White, which stated in part, "We are pleading with you to apologize to all who have been harmed or knowingly put in harm's way by having been sent wolves in sheep's clothing into their homes. We are pleading with you to apologize to all the victims and their advocates who have been silenced, marginalized, and even vilified for their concerns. We are pleading with you to do this publicly and openly so that the trust in those in places of authority and responsibility can be confirmed and renewed." In 2015, White wrote an open letter to the Friends and Workers stating that it had been proven that the allegations against him were all false and he had been cleared. In turn, Sergeant Joel Heap of the Elbert County Sheriff's Office wrote an open letter refuting White's claims. You can read his letter in the embedded material. Please read this comprehensive collection of documentation regarding the claims regarding Leslie White that the Bolters correspondence back and forth. It's on expressions, and the link is in the material. In 2019, a message appeared on an internet board indicating White was holding gospel meetings in Maine. He had been living in Maine with his sister. Overseer Ray Hoffman admitted in 2023 that White was helping him with gospel meetings in Maine, and that it wasn't the best decision he had ever made. And White's preaching days once again came to an end. Leslie White died November 7 last year, 2025.
There's a lot to read on that one. What were you going to say, Crystal?
Oh, I am really struggling to keep my mouth shut here, but I'm going to, just because for the sake of time, we have a lot yet to say. In my opinion, is not the point. So Cynthia, Dean Brewer.
We don't have a lot. Actually, I threw Howard Campbell in here because it's an
Okay.
important one. Sorry, I threw
Go
Howard
for it.
Campbell in here.
Girl, you
Well, Howard Campbell.
can I just stop you for one quick
Yep.
second? I
Yep.
want to say to everybody out there, we narrowed this down to 13. You want to know what we started with? Hundreds and hundreds of people. We went through lists. We went through so that we could literally just like just take them from here and there. Like it's so disturbing how
Yeah,
many
Yeah.
we had to pick from. Go ahead.
There are so many of these
It's
stories.
disgusting. Go ahead.
Uh,
Sorry.
yeah.
Howard
Uh,
Campbell.
In 1969, Howard Campbell was convicted of raping a 19-year-old girl who was waiting to go into the work in Idaho. Went to prison. After his release, at some point, he's made elder of a meeting in Arizona. And so in 1993, a survivor came forward. Oh, this is the Howard Campbell. Sorry.
My bad.
In 1993, a survivor came forward to workers with allegations of child sex abuse against Campbell, and nothing was done. In 2003, additional allegations of child sex abuse were reported to the workers against Campbell. And at that time, Campbell was no longer allowed to take part, but meetings were still held in his home. No appropriate legal action. In fact, quite the opposite. So, and you may have seen these before, but I wanted to plug this in here again. Letter from Ed Alexander to Howard Campbell. And the reason it's important is because it just shows. So this is 2003. This is years before Schultz does the Ruben Mada letter with those guidelines. 2003. Actually, I think this is 2005, this letter. And I can look here real quick. Yeah, it's 2005. So he says to Howard Campbell, I'm sorry that I didn't make it clear from the beginning that one of the reasons that we were so insistent that you see a professional counselor was that we, as ministers of our fellowship, have a legal responsibility to report any cases of child sex abuse that we are aware of. If we do not, we can be prosecuted for failure to report a sexual crime. You can understand that we love our people very much and don't want to report their misdeeds to the authorities. So the way we have usually complied with the law is by asking the offender to see a professional counselor. Then the counselor is required by law to report the incident, and we have fulfilled our legal responsibility by having insisted that the person get counseling. No, you have not. That's not how that works. I haven't fulfilled anything. I know that I did not make this fact clear to you in our visits, and I am sorry for any confusion that this may have caused. We did cover it obliquely, though, as there were several times that you mentioned that if you saw a counselor, it would mean that you would go back to prison. And my reply each time was that if that was the price to be right, then I felt you needed to be willing for that. Like a convicted rapist is going to go to a counselor and say, hey, I've been abusing kids and I know you're going to report me and I'm going to go back to prison. No, that's not going to happen. Okay, that guy's not going to do that. So, this little playbook was already in action before the Ruben Mada stuff. So Dean Brewer is on here because we all know about Dean Brewer, but what is also included here is Doyle Smith's letters to his staff on March 19th, 22nd, and I have my PDF screwed up here. I'm going to have to fix this. There's 3 letters from
21, 22, 23, I think.
Yeah, or something like that. 19, 21, and 22,
Yes.
along with the Dean Brewer letter. And so you can see in those letters that that Doyle is being instructed by older brother workers that we really don't want this out there. So elders, each field can have 1 copy. You can show it to people. Do not distribute it. Do not make copies. You know, let's think about really who we need to tell. I will say Doyle mentions in there that he thought everybody should know, but you know, it's pretty obvious that people like Dale Schultz are calling the shots in all of these situations. So that's why I wanted to include these Dean Brewer letters. Doyle Smith letter.
So I just want to say, as we're wrapping this up on the number of people that we're covering, so I did an interview with Robert and Sue Johnson lately, and when they left, and I said it was like 103 years of doctrine between them or something like that. I added up their years of doctrine that they had both been in their 70 and 73 when they left. Anyways, but she didn't profess till she was later. Anyway, here's my point. When the workers sat down with them to tell them about Dean Brewer, and they said, well, what about the people who will leave because of this? She literally said to them, oh, they won't. This is the fourth time we've been through this. I've been through this before. We'll be fine. And so here we are. So this is the tip of the iceberg. I just want to let everybody know. So that's that. We don't have a lot of time to go through this roundtable, so I'm just going to go through this very, very quickly. Here's what I want to say. Everything that you guys just heard is heartbreaking. When you read these letters for yourself tomorrow, and part of the reason we're putting this out there, I am telling you, we put hours into putting this. Cynthia, oh, every one of us, Cherie, Bruce, hours and hours putting this together to have this document so that it's basically a silver platter with a bow on it. You don't have to look over here and look over there and look over there. You can just click the links. It goes in the order that we've gone tonight, specific to these cases that we're discussing. It is heartbreaking. Here's what we know. Generations of the Friends have been taught that loyalty to these workers and to the 2x2 belief system equals loyalty to God. Yet the evidence that we have reviewed tonight raises some really difficult questions. The question of tonight was, are the overseers culpable for covering up these crimes? We know for sure, based on these letters, this is not Cynthia Liles sitting somewhere accusing anybody of anything. These are documented evidence between workers, all of it. You'll see it in the morning. They had knowledge. They had authority to act. They failed to take action, and their duty of care was not fulfilled. So here's the thing. Are they culpable? Yes. I'm going to say yes, they are. But here's the worst part of it that we were going to spend a lot more time talking about, that I'm just going to, you guys have anything you want to say in this? Because otherwise I'm just going to go right down this list. And nothing has changed. You're muted, Cynthia. Bruce, you and Cynthia are both muted.
I don't know what your list is, but I just happened to get an email this morning from survivor Cliff Hull, and he gave me permission to quote part of it. He was abused by worker Don Reynolds in the same room as Barry Barkley. This was back in the 1970s. And so he just happened to email Ray and Barry this morning. Good morning, Barry and Ray. And there's a line in here. Wouldn't it be a great day if your organization today chose to tell the truth and show remorse to the many thousands of victims? I hope you both have a better day and night than those you have allowed to be harmed for many years. And so to me, that's what it's really all about. Survivors, this would go such a long ways. Just start, you tell yourself the truth, start telling the truth, start showing remorse, take accountability, take care of the survivors. You have a whole bunch of money. I know you do. You have a lot of money. You can afford it. Start setting up lump sum settlements and take care of the survivors.
It's that simple. It's not more complicated than that. And if there's any question out there, once everybody download this document tomorrow about how much more documentation there is, I dare you. That's all I'm going to say. Here's what I'm going to say. Knowledge. Here they are. They're still moving people around from fields, states, and countries. They don't uniformly and expeditiously report allegations to law enforcement. They're still reframing credible allegations and completely minimizing and dismissing them. They are still protecting the reputation over the transparency. Open discussion of abuse and cover-up allegations is strictly forbidden. They're failing to provide meaningful accountability for leaders who enable concealed abuse. There is no consequences for anybody. And they still place survivors in the position of proving their credibility while extending the benefit of doubt to the perpetrators and leadership. It is mind-numbing. A normal person from any kind of normal anything outside of this mindset, it sounds absurd when we say it out loud like this. I don't know how to get them to take safety seriously. I can go on and on. I'm going to actually put this in the comments so that we don't have to go through it, but there are that policies, they don't do it. We've already talked about it. So many matters that involved criminal conduct. They're resisting independent oversight. They resist external review. They're failing to acknowledge the full scope of how serious this problem is. We have known histories, decades and decades of allegations, and yet they retain their influence, their credibility, and their access to children. Nothing changes. Absolutely. It is the 24th of June in 2026, and all that we've known, everything since Dean Brewer, it is literally status quo. Nothing has changed except for people have left. That's it. They have changed nothing. I just go on and on and on. They still are confusing loyalty to leadership with loyalty to God. There's nowhere around that. So here's what I want to just say. I also want to just raise the point that for the people who are in the congregation that know a lot of these things, whether they're elders or they're whatever else, I just want to be very clear about complicity, negligence, and willful blindness. There are legal ramifications for all of this. And I just want to tell everybody, just be careful. Just be careful. Know what you know. Hire a lawyer. Here are my closing remarks, and then we're going to get final statements. Is there anything that you guys want to add to that? Everything I just said on that? Bruce, do you want to add anything?
Sure. Well, I just want to reiterate that CSA is not an ordinary crime. It's not a financial crime where somebody is defrauded of $1,000 and they make it good with paying 1,000 back and maybe another 500. This for victims for many of the victims, this is a life sentence. It just doesn't get fixed. It's not it's a major crime. But then the second thing is that in our country, and I think in most Western countries, covering up a crime is a major crime. And in our country, there's 3 statutes that it can fall under. Penalty maximum 10 to 14 years in prison. So this is not only a serious crime, but the cover-up is also an extremely serious crime. And we need to get that in their heads so that they realize what they're doing. We have criminals amongst this group.
They don't even take the FBI investigation seriously. They don't.
Yep. That's right.
They're literally saying, oh, it's over, or Cynthia, it's just something, it's a nuisance that Cynthia's messing with. It's all her fault. It's ridiculous. I hear you though, and you're not wrong. Thank you. Okay, closing remarks, friends around the world. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men and women to do nothing. In preparation for this event, we determined through our investigative process that evidence suggests culpability exists involving approximately 80 to 90% of the overseers of the 2x2 worker church. Based on additional witness statements that are still not yet fully corroborated, we believe the percentage may be significantly higher. However, we will limit ourselves tonight to what we are literally able to document, verify, and demonstrate. We understand how systems of exclusivity operate. We understand how power is preserved, not through truth, but through control of access to salvation, through fear, through silence, through the quiet pressure placed on good people to look away. We understand how even sincere individuals can be pushed to abandon their logic, suppress their doubts, and defend what they have been taught must never be questioned. And yet, even now, there are good people holding on to hope, to belief, to the idea that what they trusted cannot be what the evidence clearly reveals. So tonight, we are begging you to engage. We are begging you to question. We are begging you to read this document. Click those links. Verify it for yourself and follow the evidence where it leads, even if it leads somewhere uncomfortable for you. Evidence does not require agreement. It only requires examination and yourself, honestly, without fear. What are you holding on to and why? More importantly, what will you do if the actual truth demands that you let it go? Because at some point, every single one of us has to decide whether or not we will defend what we were told by leaders who have betrayed our trust for decades, or can we stand on what can literally be proven and you are reading with your very own eyes? And tonight, friends, is that moment. I would like to give a personal last word before I say thank you and good night. I have a couple more things. Cherie, would you like to start with a personal last word?
I want to encourage any survivors to write their story. It's therapeutic. It has health benefits tremendously. And once they're put out in the open, which I have a place for them on my website, Expressions, they can be helped to many, many other people. So I've helped people write theirs and encourage everyone to do so. And they've told me the benefits that are theirs and how much it's helped them. So please, so if you're a survivor.
Thank you, Cherie. Bruce?
Yeah, I just want to say that for people that are listening, what do you do? Where do you go from here? What do you do? And what's holding you back? My suggestion is to put the most important values that you've learned in your life first. Put truth first, put compassion first, justice first, fairness, kindness, all those things. Do not put your leaders or your church system first. Because if you put those values, if you're a God believer, if you put those values first, you're putting God first. If you put your leaders first, they're standing in the way. So put those values first and you will find the right thing to do. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Bruce. Cynthia?
I guess my last word is to the workers and the friends. Just stop with the culture of cover up. Just stop and get honest about what's been going on, because it's still happening. There are plenty of workers currently in the work with allegations. And so to pretend that it's not still happening is it is. There's plenty of workers that have red boxes, serious ones, that are still in the work all around the world. So just stop with the cover-ups, get honest. It's true. It's true. Anybody can call me anytime. If they have questions about any allegations, I'm happy to talk. But I just, want them to get honest about things. And then, implement policies and procedures with accountability measures attached, all the things that any other responsible institution would do. Because that will keep people safe. Sorry.
Oh.
It's just to keep people safe. That's the thing. It's to keep kids from being abused.
Totally. My last word is, if you think that we're going to slow down or back off, you ain't seen nothing yet. We are just starting to turn up the heat. So if you are unsure about how you want to move forward, I would encourage you to think long and hard about the evidence that's going to keep on coming. We barely scratched the surface tonight. So I'm going to close with this. Please put your questions in the comments. There will be a document released tomorrow morning that we have been referring to all night tonight. It will be released on exposing abuse and on survivor rights. It will be downloadable. There's hot links in it to every single thing that we have discussed tonight, to every letter, to every message, to every screenshot. All of it is documented evidence that you can read for yourself. I'm going to warn you in advance, it's going to blow your mind and make you sick. Our next show is going to be live. Well, we'll have another show next week, but our next follow-up is that all those questions that you have, we will be having a live panel on here and answering those questions August 5th. It'll be another special long like this to do that. So with that, the final word that we wanted to leave with you again are the words that remember the only thing necessary for triumph of evil is for good men and women to do nothing. Thank you. Thank to all of you, and good night.
Thank you.